Amiga, do you ever feel caught between two worlds? You cherish your cultural background, but sometimes it clashes with the realities of raising a family in modern America. You might feel pressured to fulfill traditional expectations, yet you crave a life that allows you to be your true, authentic self. If you're a Latina mom nodding your head right now, I see you and I get it. Balanced Motherhood is more than your average mommy coaching program. It's a supportive comunidad designed specifically for you. I understand the unique challenges you face navigating between generations and culturas while forging your own path as a mama. Stop feeling like you have to choose between your roots and your future. Balanced Motherhood empowers you to create a life that celebrates your heritage, embraces your motherhood journey, and prioritizes your own happiness. Spots are limited. Don't miss out on this opportunity to connect with a supportive community and create a more balanced life. Visit the link in the show notes to join the waitlist for the next Balanced Motherhood cohort. I can't wait to meet you. Hola, hola, amiga. This is the first solo episode of season 4, and for the upcoming 3 weeks, you will be hearing from me and only me. So for today's episode, we're diving into a challenge that I know resonates with so many of us. And that is, how the heck do we prioritize ourselves when our time is stretched impossibly thin? If you've ever felt like there aren't enough hours in the day, this episode is for you. In this episode, I'm going to share some of the common challenges we face, as well as 5 tips or strategies on how you can prioritize yourself when time is super tight. So grab a notebook and pen because I'm sure you're going to want to take notes about these strategies. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Viva la Mami podcast. I am your host, Jessica Cuevas. I am a mother of 2 on a mission to help redefine the meaning of motherhood as a modern Latina mom. Motherhood can be a complex journey, interwoven in 2 identities that often make us feel ni de aquí ni de allá. Viva la Mami is committed to providing you with knowledge, tools, and support to navigate the challenges and triumphs of motherhood as Latina moms. On the show, we'll be discussing culturally relevant topics that will help inform and empower you in whichever season you are in on your motherhood journey. We'll be joined by Latina moms, experts and professionals who can offer advice, practical tips, relatable stories, and honest conversations. So bring your cafecito as I invite you to be a part of this space as we create comunidad about the exciting and challenging parts of being a mommy. Ahora, vámonos. All right, mamas, as Latina moms, we're masters of juggling multiple responsibilities. We wear many hats. We're caregivers, breadwinners, and so much more. But in the whirlwind of our daily lives, we often find ourselves at the very bottom of our own priority list. And so let's talk about why this happens. Well, first of all, we feel hella guilty taking time for ourselves. And as we know, growing up as Latinas, we didn't see this as a priority. Our cultural values really emphasized on the self-sacrifice, on Marianismo. And for many of us, we oftentimes saw our moms, our abuelitas, tías, really putting themselves last. They oftentimes have served the men first, ¿verdad? They made sure that everyone was well fed, and then they fed themselves the scraps of food that was left over. Or, for example, we're also trying to be super moms who can do it all. And I get it. Our society is very genderized. We live in a world where moms are still the ones that are the caretakers, the ones that are doing all of the invisible labor that oftentimes people don't talk about. And so when you really think about, okay, when do I have the capacity to really think about myself? We sometimes don't even have the ability to do that because we're thinking about, have to schedule my appointment for my kids' occupational therapy, or I have to make sure that my kids' clothes are up to date in sizes because my kids are growing up really fast. I need to spend time to make sure that the toys are being rotated at a certain amount of time. I want to make sure that my kids are well fed, and so I'm here meal prepping for them. And so all of these little examples are not just the tangible things that we're doing, like the physical labor that is involved, but it's also the invisible load, the invisible labor that we are doing in terms of how much of our mental capacity is being put to our kids and not ourselves. And so here we are, we're trying to emulate this sort of perfect mom in front of our kids when in fact we should also be worried about ourselves. And we also struggle to say no to others and other people's requests. I know that I'm guilty for not accepting the help necessarily because I feel like it's a bother, or I feel like it should be my job and responsibility to do it all. But in fact, we should say yes to any help that is being given to us. And we're also, at the end of the day, we're like exhausted and we don't know really where to start in terms of how to practice self-care or how to prioritize our own needs. And I get it. I get super exhausted by like 5 p.m. where I don't want to cook. I don't want to do anything. And that's when Alex, my husband, gets fully involved, where he cooks or he washes the dishes if I do end up cooking, or he bathes the kids while I need to decompress because I'm with them all day. And so I do get exhausted by the end of the day. And it can be a little overwhelming when it comes to really knowing what is it that I want, because we get very busy with trying to make sure that our kids are okay, that they are put in the priority list. And then when it comes to us, we don't even know ourselves. Isn't that interesting? And so I am currently going through a season of life where I am home with my kids. I do have a part-time job, but that is very inconsistent. It's basically based upon my availability and my students. I am a college counselor at a non-for-profit, and what I do is I meet with them on a monthly basis to make sure that they have their ducks in a row when it comes to their college process specifically. And so I have been thinking about, well, when do I fit time to focus on me? And time is very limiting for me because not only during the day am I taking care of the kids. Diego, our 3-year-old, is in preschool right now, so he is away, but this is only for 2.5 hours, and then I have to pick him up. But then during that time, I'm also taking care of my 15-month-old Mateo. And so then after I pick up Diego from school, it's like, okay, we got to do afternoon activities. So after lunch, we do some activities. And if they want to nap, specifically if Diego wants to nap, then great, I have some downtime. But really, and this is true what they say, everyone's like, well, prioritize on you or even take a nap while your kids are napping. But let's face it, I mean, this is usually a golden hour of opportunity to do some errands or to do some things that you have to do in the house, like chores or, washing dishes or what have you, or preparing your meal for dinner. And so that hour when it should be time perhaps to really do self-care, like for me at least, I don't end up doing it. Like I end up either working on Viva la Mami stuff or I end up washing dishes or what have you. So while the kids are napping, if they both nap at the same time, it's not a time necessarily where I get to spend it for myself. It's for others or for other things or for other necessities. And so then it's dinner time, right? And then the whole bedtime routine starts. And so by that time, it's like, 8 p.m.? And if I do have the capacity of prioritizing myself and doing something that suits me, it's usually at night or on the weekends when Alex has the availability to take care of the kids. It could be overwhelming to even think about how do I pick and choose a time to focus on myself. I understand that sometimes we are being stretched too thin with time. And even, like I said, we do feel exhausted thinking about what we should do because time is precious. And when we do have that time, it's like, oh my gosh, what should I do for myself? And so I'm going to offer some strategies on the things that I've learned on how I have prioritized myself when time is very tight. And these strategies are things that I believe are helpful for you, but also for me too. So know that I'm with you and that I am working on this myself as well. And so the first one is to sort of redefine me time. Now, this doesn't have to be long hours, right? And again, time is precious. So it could even be 10 to 15 minutes where it can make a difference. You may even want to schedule me time like any other important appointment that you make in your calendar. Just mark it down in your calendar and treat it as a non-negotiable. And so for me, whenever I have at least that short amount of time between 10 to 15 minutes, I get to really focus on what I'm doing to prioritize myself. And so one example is when I want to work out. I'm being very, very inconsistent, but whenever I do have that opportunity to work out, these are going to be short workout videos on YouTube or through this app called Slam, which is Strong Like a Mother. And I actually have an affiliate link where I will share that in the show notes. These are quick workouts, very specific to moms who are busy. And these are workouts that you can fit in with your busy schedule as well. So this usually happens either in the mornings before the kids wake up or while Diego is in school and Mateo is just kind of roaming around and he's even like working out with me. Mostly he's on top of me. So he's doing his little acrobatic moves on top of me. And so again, like it doesn't have to be 2 hours of your day. It could be 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then eventually, once you're in a different season of life, you can pick up and add more time to yourself. Also, the next strategy is learn to say no. And honestly, this is a superpower. Like saying no to things that don't align with your priorities creates space for what truly matters. And as Latinas, we know that it is very hard to say no, especially setting those boundaries between you and your family or even to yourself. Sometimes we overcommit in wanting to do everything at once. And let's reflect on what is realistic. And we have to say no to ourselves to make sure that certain priorities are being met versus others. And it's important to just let go. One example that I have specifically on this is laundry. Y'all, if you haven't followed me on Instagram or if you haven't learned about our lifestyle and situation, so we're currently living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And that is intentional because we're actually living in one of the units in our investment property. And so it's a multifamily building and we have a building of 3 units. So the other 2 units are being rented and they supplement the mortgage for us. So we're technically house hacking. But with that in itself, it came with the sacrifice of living in the smallest unit. So that way we don't have to pay for anything in terms of the cost of living. Because of that, this specific unit doesn't have an in-unit washer dryer. And so I knew that I was going to face this reality and go into the laundromat, at least for now, because I am planning to outsource and have someone do my laundry. But in terms of related to like learning to say no, I am so rigid with doing laundry. And I have a specific date where I'm like, this is the day where I'm doing laundry. But guess what? Like, there were a couple weeks ago where both kids got sick and I ended up not doing laundry on laundry day. And I was just livid. I was like so mad at myself. But then I had to reflect and I'm like, no, like, this isn't part of the priority. The priority is making sure that these kids are okay and that, they are being taken care of, because all what they wanted to do was just snuggle with me. And so again, it's making sure, like, how do I prioritize my time, not just with myself, but also other tasks that we just have to let go, you know? So yeah, just wanted to say that. Okay. And then the third strategy that I want to share is delegate and ask for help. You don't have to do everything yourself. Can your partner take on more responsibilities? Can your older kiddos help with chores? And again, this is part of our identity as Latinas and Latina moms. We have to make sure that we are those super mamas, that we are living up to this specific standard. And so when you think about time and when you have that availability to prioritize on yourself, like, you also need to make sure that someone else is doing something. Like, you want to make sure that you are outsourcing specific things that will ultimately leave you into having more windows of time for you to prioritize on yourself. And so this is something that I'm also working on. But in terms of delegating specifically, you just gotta ask for help. I cannot stress this enough. I cannot even think of an example, because you know what this should be. The fourth strategy is multitask strategically. We're really good at multitasking. And so you want to combine self-care with other activities. For example, listen to a podcast while doing chores, or turn family time into an activity by going for a walk together. So let's say if you want to be active or back at working out, just go to the park and have a walk. Or, if there's a track in the park, you can just run around and, the kids can try to catch you or whatever. And so one thing that I've been doing specifically is I'm actually a part of a book club here in Chicago through Rise and Thrive Latinas. If you haven't followed the organization, I highly encourage you to do that. But they have a book club every quarter or so. And so what I've been doing, this is my second time now, is that if I need to get stuff done, what I do is I listen to the audiobook while I'm doing dishes, or I'm, at the laundromat or whatever. And so this has been kind of like a way for me to just disconnect from the things that are going on in my head. Because again, going back to the invisible load that we have in terms of thinking and having this running list in our heads, we're not able to fully focus on ourselves. And so even if you get to do the chores or do the laundry or whatever it is, but you're being distracted by either listening to a podcast, or while you're folding clothes at home, you can watch a movie at the same time. Something that really disconnects your brain from the running list that we have in our heads. So that's that fourth tip of advice. And then the fifth one, the final strategy, is embrace the good enough. Perfection is the enemy of done. Sometimes done is better than perfect. And so what I mean by that is, y'all, like, we don't have to have a sparkling clean house at the end of the night. And I know sometimes it's hard to let that go, because again, culturally, we've seen it where las mujeres tienen que limpiar every night, because for some reason someone's going to judge you. We always think that someone's going to walk in through our door and we're going to be judged by the way that our house looks. But in reality, how does this fit your current season of life? How does this fit with your priorities to make sure that you are okay and that you are prioritizing on yourself? And so sometimes you just got to give in. And actually, I had this conversation with my client through my coaching program, Balanced Motherhood, which we are just wrapping up at the time of this recording. And what she told me was that, it's really hard for me to not leave a clean home. Like, I need to make sure that everything's in order, that everything is clean. However, she is going through a transition of having a second baby, and now she's worried that she's not going to have that time to make sure that her house is fully clean and organized, right? And what I shared with her was that, sometimes we just got to let things go, because we have to accept that we are in a season where we may be in survival mode, or we may have specific priorities. And because of her, she's going to transition and having one kid to two. And especially during that newborn stage, I asked her, I'm like, what is your priority? What is going to be your focus for the first 3 months? And that is surviving and really adapting and acclimating into this new stage of taking care of another baby, but also taking care of the other one, and how to balance that. And so we need to accept that in whatever season that we're in our motherhood journeys, we should think about how being good enough is enough, right? Perfectionism should be out of the conversation. And we should think about, okay, what do I want to prioritize? If it's leaving a clean kitchen, for example, and making sure that all the dishes are clean before the end of the night, is that going to benefit you? Or do you still have the ability to focus on yourself and perhaps build in that 15-minute workout or 20-minute workout, or read that one chapter that you've been wanting to read? And so it's about that balance, really, and figuring out what is most important to you. And so in implementing one part or all of these parts of these strategies into whatever situation that you're in a given day, for example, like, I hope that you have that ability to focus on yourself and really take that little chunk of time needed for you. Because trust me, everything else is going to work out. Everything is going to get done eventually. But if we're caught up in that moment where we're like, okay, I need to get these dishes done, otherwise I'm just like not going to be happy for myself. Like, who is going to judge you? Who is going to grade you, really? And if it's your partner, then you should communicate that, And so just keep that in mind. You may want to incorporate all of them or some of these strategies, but I hope that one of these or all of these were helpful for you. And many of us Latina moms really struggle with prioritizing ourselves due to the cultural expectations and internalized guilt that we go through. But self-care isn't selfish. It's essential. When you take care of yourself, you're better equipped to care for others. And it's so important. And you may want to start small and be consistent, and remember that your well-being matters too. And so what I want you to do is to do a quick exercise. And so if you are tuning in and sitting down, if you're at home, you may want to grab a pen and paper if you can. If you are driving, or if you do not have the capacity of doing this activity, you can always come back to the episode and listen to this. But what I want you to do is to list 3 small ways that you can prioritize yourself for this week. Maybe it's reading for 10 minutes before bed, or taking on a short walk during your lunch break, or calling a friend for a quick chat. Write these things down and commit to doing them this week. And so, mamas, this week, I challenge you to implement those 3 self-care activities you just wrote down, or that you will write down. And no matter how busy you are, I want you to make time for these. Then send me a DM on Instagram. I'll be resharing your stories as long as you tag me and I'm aware of them. And let me know how this is going too, and how this episode transformed you in some capacity. But yeah, like, just take that time. It always takes baby steps to then implement this new habit, really. You want to make sure that these are good habits. And remember, prioritizing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. You can't pour from an empty cup. And taking care of yourself allows you to show up as your best self for your familia. And if you're ready to dive deeper into prioritizing yourself and creating a more balanced motherhood, I have some exciting news for you. I'm so excited that I am relaunching my coaching program, Balanced Motherhood. It's designed specifically for Latina moms like us who want to thrive and not just survive. In this program, we're going to explore in-depth strategies for time management, self-care, and maintaining your identity as a Latina mom. You'll learn how to create a schedule that works for you, set boundaries, and rediscover your passions, all while honoring your cultural heritage. So visit vivalamami.com/balanced motherhood. That is balanced with a D at the end, motherhood, to join the waitlist and be the first to know when I'm ready to launch it. Just remember, you deserve to be at the top of your own priority list. Don't forget that. Okay, Mama. Well, thanks so much for listening. Hasta la próxima, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Mujer, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to the Viva la Mami podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a favor and follow the podcast and leave a rating and review? Hitting that follow button and reviewing my show will allow other mommies like you find this podcast. Your review will also tell me if you enjoy the show, so I would truly appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget, please share this podcast con tus amigas. Also, make sure to follow me at Viva la Mami on Instagram or visit vivalamami.com. Please note the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. Okay, mujer, thank you for joining y nos vemos in the next episode.